Welcome to the Rise to the Challenge podcast. Join me today. She's a mind-body wellness coach, fitness instructor, spokesmodel, and the creator of the Happiness Boost. It's Amanda Webster. How are you doing today, Amanda?
I am happy. I'm awesome. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm so excited to have you on the show to talk about your Rise to the Challenge. First thing we like to do with all of our guests is go right to being. Talk about where you're from and what were you involved in growing up?
I grew up in Missouri, like in a very small town, and I know a lot of people kind of have that dark background of something going on in their childhood. I actually had a great childhood. I loved my parents. I had a very good relationship with them. It was more like my peers that ostracized me. It was more of an issue with my peers, but I always had that very big Messiah complex where I always wanted to help. I was always trying to save an animal or trying to help the earth or trying to help someone. So I started that at a very young age. It was always very much a part of my personality. And I remember traveling a lot as a kid. It was mostly in the US, but I do remember a lot of falling asleep in the back seat, traveling from place to place. And growing up, I guess that didn't change much. The location just changed. Now it's an airplane instead of a back seat.
So where in Missouri are you from?
Lebanon. It's this little hick hole that civilization completely forgot about. I'm just kidding. It's a cute little town. It's about 4 hours from St. Louis, about 45 minutes from Springfield.
I'm actually from St. Louis, and now I reside in Columbia, so I know.
Oh, my dad had to go to the hospital a few times in Columbia because my dad was terminal and he had quite a few things going on. So a couple of his specialists were in Columbia, so I was up there every few weeks.
You mentioned about the ostracizing your friends did that. Was it hard for you to make friends or kind of communicate with them, or were you kind of being like solo in a way?
You know, I always had that lone wolf personality growing up, and I don't think I really had my first quote unquote friend till I was at least probably 10 or 11. And I started making my really close friends when I was 13. That's when I met my really close friends. And it wasn't so much my friends that were ostracizing me, obviously. It was my peers that, excuse me, that I was never really accepted. My parents weren't rich. I didn't have the right clothes. My boobs weren't big enough. Whatever the case was, there was always a reason that I just didn't fit in. And at the time I wanted to, I really did. I wanted to be like the Britneys or the Ashleys and, you know, be on the sports teams or whatever. But I wasn't the basketball team my freshman year, but I never really got to play that much. And it wasn't anything super serious. I never had the qualities that made people accepted in like junior high and high school, which in retrospect, it's funny because all of the people that I know that were like me were the ones that ended up going on to be successful, and all the ones that were, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Popular for the most part were the ones that just, you know, tended to live more quiet lives, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I know that would have never been for me. I'm not a quiet person, so I know that I never would have been happy with, you know, just a quiet life.
Growing up, did you have any motivations or someone that you inspired to be?
I don't know about someone I inspired to be. I know that, you know, my parents were super inspirational. They were very good people. And my mom, she always, you know, had this very fierce, nowadays we call it boss lady personality. She was just always very powerful. And my dad was always that don't give up type person and prove them wrong. Like that was what my dad always said, prove them wrong. Somebody tells you can't do something, you prove them wrong. And that became a big theme in my healing journey, was prove them wrong, prove them wrong. I know that I watched a lot of professional wrestling with my dad. That was a big thing. So a lot of my heroes were wrestlers. Diamond Dallas Page, who I ended up interviewing for my YouTube channel. We ended up becoming kind of friends. But I had a lot of wrestlers that I looked up to because they were what I felt I couldn't be. You know, they were strong and they were outspoken and they were powerful, and in a way it was all those things that I couldn't be. So I looked up a lot to people like that. I feel like I had more like characters in TV shows or movies or stuff that I looked up to. I definitely had a Superman phase that I went through where I was gonna marry like Dean Cain because I was just so in love with Superman. Because I wanted to be that hero. I very much wanted to be that for somebody. I wanted to save the world. I wanted to save the girl or the guy or whatever. I had that complex. So somewhere between the wrestlers and the superheroes.
I think a lot of people can have that similar motivation or who they inspire by. And those fictional characters, sometimes we as individuals, we can connect to those characters, or we can kind of see maybe we want to follow that path, even though we know their normal lives is completely different, but we see them all the time on TV that we're like, I wish we could be like that.
Oh, absolutely. And in my teenage years growing up, I did start developing different, I don't want to say, not, I can't think of the right word for it, but I started developing different kind of like heroes where there are people that I definitely wanted to be more like, or people that I realized I was like. I think that's more what it is that we see the traits that are really deep down inside of us, even if we don't speak out openly about them, those traits that are deep down inside of us, we see that in someone else and go, oh, wow, like, and we connect to them in some way. For me, the character of Elle Woods on Legally Blonde was really big through my teenage years, and quite a few people were like, God, you wear too much pink. And it wasn't because of Elle. I started wearing pink long before that movie came out. But I did end up adopting Chihuahuas over the years. I had 3 different Chihuahuas that I adopted. I did a rescue for Chihuahuas and stuff. So, and I feel like in a way that had kind of driven me to be who I was, to, stand up for the things that I wanted to stand up for. But I definitely got my love of Chihuahuas from Legally Blonde, and I just lost my last one as of last year. But that was my last little girl. Her name was Paris. She's the only one that I have here. But I always had a big heart for a lot of different causes, and people always chide me like, "Why don't you care about people?" Well, I do, and I do help people when I can, but my heart is just largely with animals.
I think it's a passion. Like we want to stick with what we're passionate about. And you're talking about how animals is a huge thing for you, and you're going to continue to. And I think people need to remember it's not like that is taking over our lives. Is we're focusing on that at the time, but we still care about other things also.
I remember when Chester Bennington from Lincoln Park had lost his life to suicide, and I had a friend, because I was really kind of grieving about it and I didn't know who to talk to, and I reached out to a friend and I said, hey, I'm really struggling with this, like Chester Bennington passed away. And he's like, oh, that guy from that band, like you didn't know him, why does that matter? And got pretty hateful about it, and then said, well, if you cared half as much about the people in your life as you did some singer that you didn't even know. And I'm sitting there going, holy crap, I've always been the person that when somebody comes to me, I try to help. I'm the person everyone comes to when they're gay, pregnant, they're getting out of a relationship. I've always kind of been that person that people come to because they know they can open up to me. So it's just strange to judge somebody for the things that they grieve over, the things that they feel strongly about or passionately about. I don't understand why we judge other people's desires, other people's motivations, as long as it's for the greater good, I guess. As long as in some way it's for the greater good, then I think that's what matters. Are our actions moving something forward in this world? That's what matters.
Did you have a dream job that you were wanting to pursue?
I always wanted to be a model, actually. So I'm really happy that I got to pursue that in a lot of different ways. I also wanted to be a writer, and my book is coming out next year. I'm working with a literary agent right now, so my book should be slated to come out next year. I'm excited about that. So I am one of those people that I did have dreams growing up, and I chased them, made them come true. I remember when I was really little, I was probably 6 or 7, and they'd asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I said, I want to be a cop so I can have a gun. And in retrospect, people are like, oh, that's so cute. The kids, so I have a gun. I have my gun, and right now with everything going on in this country, you could pry that from my cold dead hands. Like I'm going to hold on to my pink lady. And my gun is actually pink, just to be clear. That's not a metaphor. I actually have it.
Wow.
It's a Charter Arms, a pink lady gun, yeah.
So were you one of those, like any path you were taking, as long as you were hitting your goals, that's what you were wanting to do? Like you said that you wanted to be a model or a writer, you would do anything to make sure your dreams came true.
Yes, I did end up developing that, but there was a long period of time where I didn't believe in myself. I didn't think I could do those things. I listened to everyone else that told me, I wasn't tall enough to be a model. I didn't have the boobs to be a model. I literally had people tell me that I was too fat. For all y'all that are listening to this, I'm about 104 pounds. So I don't know where that came from, but I had a lot of these limiting beliefs, these tapes put in my head by other people that told me that, I wasn't good enough, or my writing wasn't talented enough, or it was too poetic, like too I don't know really the word I'm looking for, but that it just wasn't clear enough. It wasn't the cliche of what writing should be. And to all those people, haha, I proved you wrong.
Is that the thing?
But
Kind of like what your dad said, prove them wrong.
oh yeah, and that really became a big drive in my life. It took a while. It definitely did. I listened to it for a while, and I let those people drag me down. But yeah, it got to the point where I knew that I couldn't die not accomplishing these things that I wanted to accomplish. And at the very least, if I did have to die not being able to accomplish those things, I could slide into the grave knowing that I gave it my all. And I did.
So what was next for you? Did you go to education, pursuing it with college, or did you go right into the workforce?
Well, to be honest, I actually dropped out my junior year. I was sexually assaulted when I was 16, and I just couldn't face that person. I couldn't fathom the thought of going to school and having to see my rapist every day. And I dropped out literally the next day, right after it happened, went to school, signed the papers, dropped out. My parents were just in shock because I had always been a good student. I'd always been very involved, and I'd always done well with school, but I jumped on fear and impulse, and I ended up dropping out of school. And I spent several years just partying and spiraling, and I didn't go right into the workforce, didn't go right into school. And when I finally decided, okay, get my life together, I'm going to go to community college, I'm going to go get at least a job so I can have some money, to pursue something, even if it's just, some little piddly job. My dad passed away. I was 20. So then it was a point of, okay, well, I have to try and get through my grief and try and help my mom. And we were in Arizona at the time, in a little mountain town. And my dad had made me promise that I'd get my mom home to Ohio. So I ended up moving with her to Ohio. And that was just a big dramatic series of events where we ended up homeless. So it was about a year of just trying to survive and get things together. We lived in our cars for a while. We were in this really just scary house. It was in kind of a really sketchy neighborhood where we had meth labs exploding everywhere, and it was awful. Like it was a really, really terrible experience. But as I'm trying to come out of that and get, a job here or there, and I started trying to get back into the modeling a little bit, but there's only so much you can do when you're in that kind of a situation, or at least that's what I felt at the time. And her and I moved to California. We moved to Sacramento because I thought, okay, well, I could drive up to NorCal or down to SoCal and pursue modeling that way, and I can go to college here. She passes away. So now I'm 22. I've lost both my parents. I didn't know what to do. I was in just shock and grief because my dad was terminal, but my mom was not. She was very unexpected. It was a heart attack, very unexpected. And I didn't know how to cope because nobody teaches you that. That's not something you learn in school. You learn all these arbitrary math things you're never going to remember. You learn all these dates of wars you're never going to need to know in your life, but you don't learn how to cope with anxiety or stress or grief, or really even how to balance a checkbook or file your taxes or anything practical and useful, pretty much. No, none of that's important. But I started kind of spiraling after that. I didn't end up going to college till I was, I was in my mid 20s when I went back and went to school and got my mind body wellness degree. I pursued, little things. I ended up shooting for Playboy when I was 24-ish. I ended up shooting for Playboy, and that was a huge, modeling goal for me. But I didn't really start taking it seriously until my mid to late 20s.
When you lost your mom, did it kind of play a big effect mentally, and you were just trying to survive each day because you didn't maybe know anyone out in California, or you were just trying to use in your mind, my family's here supporting me and I'm going to try to make them proud?
You know, my parents were really the only family that I had. So feeling like they were gone, I didn't know, as I said, what to do. And yeah, I didn't know anybody. I had just moved to Sacramento. I knew nobody there. The night she passed away, actually, the yard guy, like the maintenance guy for our apartment complex, ended up coming up and spending the night like on my floor watching movies with me because I was just a wreck and I had nobody. And I called my friends, but there's only so much, you can do for someone who's grieving a loss that intense over the phone. And I did have one friend who came out to be there with me to help me through that, and we ended up dating, and in the long run he ended up being the father of my son several years later. And it didn't work out. Like, we weren't in a healthy position. You can't get into a relationship that's going to be healthy when you're not in a healthy state of mind, and I wasn't. I was in grief and shock, and I didn't even know who I was, and it wasn't a good idea to get into that relationship. I realize that in retrospect now. But yeah, it really was a question of survival. It was really a matter of, okay, hold on. I just felt like I was constantly holding on, like really tight, just trying not to lose control. And there was, cigarettes and drugs and alcohol and pretty much anything I can do just to get through to the next day. There was self-harming on and off, and nothing was consistent, but it was literally just anything I could do to get through the day, whether that was a line of Coke or a cigarette or a pack of cigarettes or a bottle of wine or whatever I had to do to get through the day. And it was a really hard time, not just because, I'm grieving the loss of my mom, but I was still living with her because she wasn't handling losing my dad well, and she passed 2 years, almost to the day actually, after he passed away. And so I was still living with her. So this is the first time I'm living on my own, and I have nothing to fall back on. Like, I don't have a home, like I don't have a family to go back to if I fail. It's, well, here's the real world, welcome to it, figure it out. And that's a lot to take on all at once, especially when I did already struggle, with anxiety and depression and these things, to suddenly just be thrown in this world that I didn't understand very unexpectedly. Yeah, it was just whatever I could do.
When you were going through with drugs, alcohol, and all of that, was this during the time that you had your son, or was it years later that your son came into the world?
I dabbled in drugs as a teenager. Like, I was introduced to cocaine as a teenager, but I never was an addict. I used here and there. It was more like a party drug to me. When my mom passed away, this was several years before my son. This was in 2007. My son was born in 2011. And so I went through the first kind of cycle before he was born. I quit smoking and everything when he was born. When I found out I was pregnant, I quit everything. No alcohol, no cigarettes, no drugs, no nothing. It didn't kick back up again until 2017, and there was some self-harm in there, like alcohol, maybe a drink or two, but nothing too concerning. As compared to what I had gone through or what I would go through. I'm not saying that it's ever okay. It's definitely not something you want to turn to, but it wasn't as extreme as it was, or as it was about to become. And in 2017, I split custody with his dad. His dad and I had separated when he was like 18 months. He was pretty young. His dad and I separated, so we split custody. And I started falling really hard into the drugs and the self-harm and the alcohol, the worst of my life, actually. It became a full-blown addiction at that point, like full-blown daily use. And I never used around him, and I was never high around him, and he never saw any of my self-harm scars or anything. But, when he's going to school and with his dad, leaves kind of plenty, he spent 50% of the time with his dad. It kind of left plenty of time for that. But even in my worst of times, I still couldn't do that around him. I didn't want him to see me like that. I didn't want him to know, in my mind, what a failure his mom was, because that's how I felt. I felt like a complete failure, but I felt like this was the only thing that made me functional. Like, the Coke managed my thoughts. The alcohol, the self-harm, it managed my thoughts. It managed the pain on some level.
Were you able to continue to find like modeling gigs during this time, or was it kind of your focus wasn't on the professional world at the time?
Oh, modeling people don't even care. They'd probably give you the Coke themselves. I'd been given Coke several times in modeling circles and modeling situations, so it was definitely not hard to upkeep that lifestyle with that sort of career, because in many ways they almost perpetuated a lot of modeling gigs, kind of perpetuated. And It wasn't the drugs that kept me from pursuing the things I wanted to pursue. It was absolutely the depression. The drugs were a symptom at that point of the depression, of the anxiety, of the struggles I was going through. And it was more that and my mindset than the drugs themselves. I was never to the point where I take that back. There was a point where I overdosed on the bathroom floor and think everything that my son was not there. But there was a time where it got really bad. But for the most part, I tell myself, it's just a line. It's just a line in the morning. It's no big deal. It becomes a big deal. It really does. It takes over your head in the long run, whether it's a line or an 8 ball or whatever it is you're doing. It affects you. That one line, that one drink, that one cigarette can be, that the catalyst to something much, much worse if you're not careful.
So talk about October 2018 in your time where you were on the ledge in a hotel room. Talk about that. What was going on during that time?
So interestingly enough, I had actually went into recovery for self-harm and cocaine in the summer of 2018. So by the time this comes around, I was already several months into recovery. And people will often assume, oh, you're in recovery, that means you're doing well, right? No. The problem is yes, I had made the decision to stop using drugs and stop self-harming. After I met Mike Shinoda, the surviving singer of Linkin Park, I had decided to stop doing these things and made that commitment to myself. But the problem is I hadn't dealt with the underlying reason of why I had those vices in the first place. Like, what was causing me to want to do these things in the first place or feel the need to do these things. And it had been a really rough road anyway, because in summer of 2017, I was wrongfully accused of two legal battles that went on for a very long time. Like the one was, I was wrongfully accused of a DUI, so it was a very long, drawn-out case, and it was something that I passionately was like, oh hell no, you're not putting that on my name, because I'm very much against drunk driving. But I was also in a car accident. I had a big fight with a friend. I was having a falling out in a relationship. So it's like my close friendship was falling apart. My relationship was falling apart. I was dealing with all this struggle, like legally and financially. And I was a single mom. So there was already enough, weighing down on me. And then once I stopped using, it's like, okay, well, now I don't know what to do, because I don't have the drugs. I don't have my parents. Chester had lost his life to suicide. So I didn't even have this like vice that I turned to since my teenage years, because it had just been the music and his legacy, his life had just been very inspirational to me, and had been like a source of strength and courage. So when he lost his battle, I'm like, well, what the hell do I have? Like, why do I think I can beat mine? And things just compounded. Like when I didn't have any coping mechanism and I didn't know what to do anymore, I was in Canada. I was there for a Justin Timberlake concert. My friend had flown me there for a Justin Timberlake concert. And I just remember feeling so not only alone, like I felt like lonely, like nobody in the world cared. I felt overwhelmed, that the pain was just too much. The stress was just too much. There's too much on me. I didn't know how to deal with it. And when I went to the concert, I was supposed to have like this really good seat. And I know this is so arbitrary, first world problem, but this was something that I was doing for myself, because when I was 13, I was supposed to go meet the guys at NSYNC, and my dad went to the hospital that day, so I chose to be there for him. So in my adult life, I went back and met them all. And this person just wasn't what I expected him to be, like not what I thought he would be. And again, I realize in retrospect that sounds kind of silly, but it's what it represented. It was like, that was part of my childhood that died in a way. So now it's like, even this nostalgia in my head felt like a lie. So everything I'd ever believed in felt like a lie. And I remember, I got up on the ledge and I was just looking down. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I cannot deal with this pain anymore. And I looked down and I thought, I hope that this doesn't hurt, because I just don't want to hurt anymore. And I started thinking about my son, and I thought, this is what's best for him, because he doesn't deserve, a fuck up like me as a mom. And so for all the people that say suicide is selfish, let that sink in. My son was the last thing I was thinking about before I was going to jump. And the world just seems so dark. I had this shadow in my head that was constantly whispering how terrible I was, that I was a bad mom, that I was ugly, that I was stupid, that I was a bad friend, that I was unlovable. I had this bully in my head that just was relentless, and I didn't know how to turn it off, and I didn't know how to stop the pain, and I didn't have anything left to turn to. I felt like I tried everything and nothing was making the pain stop. And the only thing that brought me down was the cleaning crew that I didn't even know existed, because I'd been there for 3 days and I hadn't heard hide nor hair of anyone. The cleaning crew turned on their stereo just outside my door, which was actually kind of weird because I was in the middle of the hallway anyway, so it was a very odd place for them to start cleaning. But they turned on their stereo, and it was Breaking the Habit by Linkin Park. And I just froze and went, oh my God. Like, I'm not even a believer. I'm not particularly religious or spiritual or anything, but I knew I couldn't jump. I knew that I had to fight, and that was in some weird way like this battle cry, this battle song. And I stepped down first because I had to know it was real. I went and I kind of opened the door and peeked my head out because I'm like, is this just, they say that, you know, right before you die, your life flashes before you. And this, it makes sense that my life would be, that the theme song to my life would be some Linkin Park song. So I initially stepped down and looked just because I was kind of, holy crap, in shock. And there were two guys outside the door, and I had a little short interaction with them in French, and I went back inside the room and just fell apart. And I realized as I'm sobbing and just pretty much screaming out, so I'm sorry to the neighbors of that hotel. I'm really sorry that you probably had to listen to me for a while, but just falling apart was so therapeutic. It was so cathartic because I never allowed myself to just be raw like that. I'd cried. I definitely cried. I'd cursed the world, but I never allowed myself to just genuinely, truly fall apart. And that was kind of the first step to getting through the grief and getting through the trauma, because I'd been through so much. I mean, I'm not going to candy coat it. I had been through a lot in my life, and I'd never processed a damn bit of it. So I was still stuck in all of it. So imagine being stuck in being raped as a 16-year-old. Imagine being stuck in losing your parents. And it's just kind of like playing over and over and over. I was watching Lucifer, and there's this concept of, you know, the things that you feel most guilty about are the things that are very traumatic for you. It creates a hell loop. So when you're in hell, it just replays this over and over and over. And that's what it felt like. But it was crazy because the interesting thing about that is in the show, they say that you can step out of it. It's your guilt and your trauma and your feelings and your emotions that are keeping you in that hell loop.
Do you think that that song that was playing, it was kind of like a calling, like maybe Chester was speaking to you in a way? And now when you hear that song, does it kind of have a place in your heart, like the song saved my life in a way?
Absolutely. And it was really hard for me to listen to it for a long time because, you know, I would hear it and I go, if this song had not played, I would be dead. And there's no like ifs, ands, or buts. And I don't know if it was my parents or an angel or Chester or the universe or what it was. But yeah, I knew in my very deepest core that I was meant to be here. And I didn't know why at the time, but I knew that I wasn't meant to jump. And I knew that, you know, I had to find a way. I had to fight. I had to find my purpose. And I will say when I came down, like in the days after, I had made a pact with myself that I was going to give this absolutely everything in the world for 1 year. And if at the end of that year, I still felt that same pain, I gave myself permission to jump. Because I knew that, you know, Chester, or whatever you want to call it, had saved me in that moment, but he wasn't always going to be there. And that was kind of the underlying message, right? Like I'd lost my parents. I'd lost this influence of Chester. I'd lost, you know, everything. I was 1,000 miles away from my friends. I lost all these things, my relationships, but I still had me. And I had relinquished my power in a way because, you know, I defined myself. I was like, I was a victim of rape. I was a depressed person. Like I was a person that had depression. And I had relinquished my power. And when I started turning it around and saying, I'm a survivor of rape, and I'm a person who has symptoms of depression, but those things aren't who I am. And I'm certainly not going to give my power to my rapist. I'm not going to give my power to this disorder because I'm more than that. And because they don't deserve it. They don't deserve that power. They don't deserve, you know, my energy like that.
So you mentioned that you gave yourself a year. What was that mission that you wanted to accomplish in a year?
It's kind of crazy because I just wanted to be happy. I realized that I'd never really genuinely truly been happy. And I went to a mental health professional. I went to a psychiatrist when I came back from Canada. And I said, look, this is what happened. I told her about the hotel room incident, but I said, I am determined to change this. I'm determined to do anything I have to do to get out of this depression, to get out of this hole, because I don't want to wind up back on the ledge. I said, I'm tired of just being in a place where I feel that all you really care about is me not killing myself on your watch. Like, that's really at the end of the day what it seemed like. There was never a, well, let's make sure that you're living a fulfilling life that you want to live, you know. There was never any, how do you take care of yourself, like how do you really have optimal mental health, what can you do, Amanda? There was never a point where anybody gave me that power. And when I told her, I'm determined to be happy and I just need your help, I need to know what to do, she straight out told me, well, that's not possible for someone with your disorder because or with your diagnosis, because I've been diagnosed as having a serious mental illness, or SMI. She said, that's not possible for someone like you. Like, you could be functional, but you'll never really be happy. And that was, we were talking about the heroes and the Elwoods thing. That was my Elwoods and the bunny costume when Warner told her she wasn't smart enough for law school, because there was just fire inside. And all I could think of was my dad. And there was actually Mike Shinoda, a song called Prove You Wrong. And that's all I could think of. I went in my car and listened to it because I was like, now I had my own motivation to get better, but now, like, you've told me I can't. Oh, you watch me, lady, you watch me. And I still didn't really know what to do. But I reached out to Diamond Dallas Page, who was one of, like I said, one of my childhood wrestling heroes turned like yoga instructor confidant. And I said, like, I don't know what to do, but this is what's going on. Like, I didn't say that I'd been suicidal, but I just said, I'm really struggling and I don't know what to do. And he said, you did this to yourself and it's on you to get yourself out of it. I did not want to hear that. That's not the advice I needed. I'm like, this is not what I wanted to hear. But it's what I needed to hear, and it's what my dad would have told me. Because my dad was very much, he was tough love in all the right ways. Like, he wasn't tough love as in suck it up, figure it out, but he was tough love as in take your power back. Like, take your power back. You've been giving your power to all these people. You gave your power to a rapist. You gave your power to all these mental health professionals, but you did not take the responsibility to reclaim your power yourself. And that was when I started like analyzing, well, what can I do? What can I do to have a positive effect on my mental well-being, my mental health? What can I do? What actions can I take? And it was a process. It took months to really get to a point where I felt like I was out of that darkness. And I will tell you the exact moment that I started realizing that it was that moment that made me start kind of flashing back and going, oh crap. One of my big things is toxic productivity. Like, I am that type of person that I will have a to-do list a mile long, and if I don't get it all done in a day, I would just hate myself over it and be like, oh my God, I'm just lazy and don't do anything. And I was very much on, okay, I have 30 minutes to do this, and then 40 minutes to do this, and then I have to do this, and blah, blah, blah. I was going on a bike ride with my son that I had allotted exactly half an hour for. And I will say, when I was in the worst part of the depression, when I was in that rock bottom, I knew, like, intrinsically that I loved my son, but I didn't feel it. He could hug me and I felt absolutely nothing at all, just completely numb. And I knew even in that time, I would have taken a bullet for my kid, but I didn't feel anything. Like, I didn't feel any happy or joy or love. And I remember we were going on this bike ride, and my whole time I'm sitting there going, okay, well, I have 22 minutes. If we do this, we do that. I'm timing it in my head. And my son stops in front of this house, and I'm just going, okay, come on, that's great, let's go, let's finish this. And he's like, mama, look. And he, like, points. And this house that I passed like a bazillion times, it's right up the street from me, there was just all of these rose bushes, like all these different color rose bushes, like blue. I didn't even know there were blue roses. I didn't know it was a thing, but there were like these blue roses and yellow and pink and red. And I just stood there and I went, oh my God, like, I never saw this. How did I miss this all this time? And he comes over and he takes my hand and he said, je t'aime maman, which means I love you, mommy, in French. And I said, oh, je t'aime mon loulou, which means I love you, my little wolf, which is just like a term of endearment. And I felt it. And I felt that love and that connection. And when I started looking back, I realized, wow, like, in the past few weeks prior to this incident, when I got out of bed, it was more of a cool, like what can I do today? What adventure can I have? What can I get into, instead of the, oh, not this crap again. Like, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. I'm just going to hide under my blanket. It was more of an excitement to get out of bed, and a gratitude for my day and for the things that I've been given. Even if my day wasn't going to be perfect, or even if the day before wasn't perfect, my mindset had shifted. And I started realizing that I didn't really have the symptoms of depression anymore, of this serious mental illness. So I called my mental health professional. I said, look, I want to be reevaluated. And she just keeps reiterating, well, that's not possible. Like, people that are SMI don't get decertified. That's not a thing. I fought for almost a year. I fought because I'm like, I want to be reevaluated. I don't want this on like my record. I don't want this label that doesn't fit me. And eventually I kind of went above her head. It took a while of going over her head and over their head, and then, circling about, and it was kind of just this whole pony show. But when I was evaluated in November of 2018, which was right after the hotel incident, there's this thing called DAS, which is Depression, Anxiety, Stress Scales. And this is how they measure like depression and anxiety and stress in a person, to see how serious it is. Well, for me, my depression was a 20 and my anxiety was a 16. So for reference, 21 with depression is serious. Like, that's as serious as it can be. And I was a 20. And when I had them reevaluate me, which was May of this year, mind you, right when COVID was kicking up really bad, and we were all in quarantine and everybody was killing each other over toilet paper, they reevaluated me, and my depression was a 3 and my anxiety was a 2.
Wow.
So I realized that there was a very tangible way to see that I had made these improvements, that I'd figured out exactly what it was I needed to implement, in my life to get there. And the mind-body connection isn't really a secret anymore. Scientists are talking about it all the time, and they've proven that trauma that isn't dealt with and stress that isn't dealt with can cause even cancer. Like, it can cause all these different issues. And that's why we can only really reach our mental health potential if we're looking at these different areas. And that was my problem. I felt like I'd done everything, but I hadn't, because I hadn't really, number one, taken my own power and done, the things that I needed to do for myself. I kept relying on everyone else to fix me when I wasn't broken in the first place. A little lost maybe, but not broken. And once I really found these, as I call them now, my 5 puzzle pieces of happiness, that's kind of the name of my framework that I teach, that is the method that I went through, the process that I went through, just to take out all the guesswork, because there's a lot of guesswork. I had to really kind of, it was a trial and error process. But once I nailed down like these 5 things, my life really started to change, and my depression and anxiety was just plummeting. And I never thought that I would really be able to say I'm a happy person, but I'm a pretty happy person.
Were you able to, like, the people that said, oh, I don't know if you're able to fix this, like your mental specialist and even Diamond Dallas Page, were you able to go back to them and show the improvement and the progress you have made and the changes to fulfill maybe some happiness now?
I think Dallas always believed in me. So I don't think that was so much as of approving as kind of saying, like, look, like, to a kind of a father figure, because he did kind of have like this father figure to me. And being able to show him and have him be like that kind of proud papa, that was cool. But oh God, like going back to that psychologist was one of the happiest moments of my life, because I just looked at her and I said, don't you ever tell someone what they are capable of. Don't you ever put limitations on a person, because I proved you wrong. I proved you wrong. I was decertified. I'm happy. I don't have these symptoms of depression anymore. And you told me that that wasn't possible. Imagine if when I went to her and I said, this is what I want, and I really wanted to be happy and I had this motivation. Imagine if I would have been in that dark place and she told me that's not possible. What do you think the outcome of that would have been?
That would not be a good one.
Yeah, and it was amazing. I actually got to interview Dallas for my YouTube channel, talking about depression and stuff, and I got to tell him about this, and it was really awesome, getting to share that and tell him, what an influence he had on me, not only as a child when I was in my little DDP shirt doing the diamond cutter and everything, but, you know, as an adult, that he had kind of guided me in the right way when I didn't have my dad there to do it. Like, he kind of stood in for that. And that's kind of the message I want people to walk away with when I do share my story and stuff, is that people are always going to put limitations on you. You're probably going to put limitations on yourself. I definitely did. I let everyone else define me. I let everyone else define my limitations or my capabilities, and I believed it, and it became real in my head. And, you know, the depression was very real. I did have clinical depression. It was very real, but I took control. And it's not an easy process. It's not a quick process. It's not that's the thing that people need to understand. There is no pill that you can take that's going to make you happy. Some people need medication, and that's fine. I did not deal well with medication. They tried me on like dozens of different brands and like the lowest doses possible. That didn't work for me. Some people that works great for, but there's never a pill that's going to make you happy. There's never a pill that's going to really, quote unquote, fix you. There's no quick fix, guys. It takes work, it does. And if you want to be at the top of what I call the happiness spectrum, your own personal happiness spectrum, if you want to have optimal mental health, you do have to really analyze your lifestyle, your decisions, your mindset. Those things are going to affect your mental health, and it's so underrated. And people often say to me, well, it's not like you can just eat a salad and get over depression. It's not like you can just, you know, change your mindset and get over depression. That's absolutely true. You can't. But these different categories, these different pieces, as I call them, really do have a massive effect on your mental health. People say, oh, you can't eat a salad to get heal yourself from depression. Well, no, but if you're deficient in every freaking nutrient that's going to affect your mental health, that's going to exacerbate the symptoms of depression. So if you're eating crap and your body is not getting the nutrients it needs to be able to have optimal mental health, guess how that's going to show up? If you're eating like gross food and it's causing inflammation, that's sending, there's a physical connection between the brain and the gut. It's called the vagus nerve. And if you're eating all this crap that's causing inflammation, that sends messages up through the vagus nerve that are telling your brain, hey, something's wrong. And that shows up as symptoms of anxiety, depression, stress, all of these different things. So they're definitely, there's a lot of connections that people just don't want to come to terms with because they don't want to make the changes, because they are challenging, but damn, they're so worth it.
I think people can also take the topic of limitations in their professional life. I think with managers nowadays, they're saying, oh, well, you're only able to do this. And it affects people mentally, where they're like, I can do so much more. Let me show you. And they're not given those opportunities. So they're trying to find ways to get around it. And I know I've definitely been in that situation where, oh, my title only says this, but look at all the stuff I'm able to do. Look at all the things I'm able to accomplish. Let me show you what I can do. Let me show you the progress I can make. And it kind of shows people, like how you were with your psychologist. I'm showing these people what I can do, proving them wrong. I think that title, prove them wrong, or prove them how it was, I think that's like definitely a saying that everyone can take from if you're listening to this interview, because no one should tell you what you can and can't do. We all can accomplish anything we want, and we can all be able to do the things that we love doing.
You know, I grew up, like I said, in this small town of Missouri, and you're absolutely right. Like, I was constantly told all of these things that made me not good enough, and I never would have thought that at 35 years old, I would be, you know, I accomplished my dreams. I shot for Playboy. I wrote my book. Billy Bob Thornton is endorsing my book. Like, I'm just this small town, like a little Missouri girl, and I have some, like, Golden Globe winning actor that's Oscar winning actor that's endorsing my book, and I'm just like, holy crap. And I'm sitting here interviewing these celebrities for my YouTube channel, and people told me it wasn't possible. When I, back in 2015, decided that I wanted, well, it was a little bit before that, I decided that I wanted to travel. And I was a single mom at the time, and people kept saying, well, you can't do that because, you know, you're a single mom, you don't have a lot of money, and you have to think about your kid, and blah, 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 you know, limitation. In 2015, not only did my son and I go on like this 9-day trip up over across Arizona and then up the coast to California, I ended up going to 5 different countries that year, and I split custody, like I said. So he went with me too on some stuff, but some stuff I was able to do without him. And I didn't do anything crazy. I didn't, go sell drugs or become a hooker or something to make money. It's just once I stopped having that limiting thought of, oh, I'm a single mom and I don't have a lot of money, because I was working for myself. I had my own business. I was working for myself. And they were kind of right. I didn't have the money and I was a single mom. Those two things were true, but I knew it was going to happen, and I made it happen. And I've had so many crazy adventures. I've traveled to like a dozen different countries, and I've met all of these amazing people. And I'm sitting here like, I did an interview with Jamie Bennington on my YouTube channel the other day about mental health, because I'm just really about breaking the stigma and keeping the conversation going. And the whole time, like we're actually sitting there talking about law of attraction and stuff, about mental health, and I'm sitting there going, that's kind of funny because I totally attracted you. Like I attracted this interview, this energy, this opportunity. And a lot of people look at the law of attraction as like hippie woo-woo stuff, but it's not. Like if you really put it in your head that the things that you want are going to happen, they're going to happen, because that's the energy you're going to put out. You're going to put forth the energy and the effort to make them happen, instead of the energy and the effort to make excuses for them not to happen. You're going to be looking for the opportunities. You're going to be, actively creating opportunities and stuff, instead of just continuously making excuses. And I will tell you, I'm nothing particularly special. I mean, I think I'm a special person, but I don't have any special opportunities. I wasn't rich. I didn't grow up rich. I didn't grow up with some kind of special influence. I didn't have special connections. My parents didn't have special connections, but I ended up really finding this I created this amazing, amazing life because I stopped listening to all the people, and the people that I did hear, I just proved them wrong. I just chose to prove them wrong.
I think I can relate to you in the way where you're talking to all these amazing people, celebrity, high-profile names. I'm the similar way. I'm a normal guy from St. Louis. Don't really have a big name at all, but I'm being able to talk to so many great individuals, and some that people I've looked up to, and I'm like, wow, I'm able to talk to these people. And I think I've been going through a lot where sometimes my friends, family think that the whole podcast takes over my life. I'm just happy what I'm able to accomplish, and I want to share that with all my friends and family and show them, look what I'm able to accomplish. And I've never thought in a million years I'd be talking to people like we are right now. But the pandemic, in a way, kind of brought that opportunity, and I took it at full force, and it's been the best experience ever. And it's just amazing how some things happen that people look at in a negative, but we can all turn it around into a positive.
I think it's insane how people will try to be like, oh, that's consuming your life, or oh, you shouldn't do that, or oh, you shouldn't do this. And the truth of the matter is, actually, it's interesting because my newsletter that I just sent out this morning, I do this newsletter just to kind of give people a different insight or some motivation stuff, especially during this time. I was talking about normal and what it means to be normal. First and foremost, there is no normal. That's just a very weird concept. And our culture projects like this idea of this person that has everything pulled together, and that's normal. Like if you don't have everything together and you're not, consistently kind and patient and calm, like then you're not normal. And if you don't have this 8 to 4 job and you have kids at this age and you get married at this age and you do this and you do that and blah, 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 like you're not normal. If you don't buy into what is healthy or what is normal. Like I get made fun of all the time because I'm vegan, and people are always like, oh, don't you miss eating cheeseburger? No, I really don't, dude. I'm not missing out on life at all to not go, eat a dead cow somewhere. That's just weird. But people have this whole concept of what normal is. And at the end of the day, I guess, we only have the experience that we have inside of us. We're very, very limited. And the experience we have with other people, like of what we see their experience as, not only is limited because we're not in their head, but it's filtered. There is no normal. And I will say the people that are abnormal, like the freaks, like me and you, we're the happiest people. Like those people that have the 8 to 4 jobs are freaking miserable. And one of my favorite things that I realized about a year ago is there's so many people that are all about keeping up with the Joneses, like keeping up with the neighbors. Do I have a nice car? Do I have a nice phone? The Joneses are in debt, first and foremost, and they're probably just as miserable as like everyone else. It has absolutely nothing to do with how much stuff you have. Look, I went to Haiti in 2018, and there are people that don't even know where their next freaking meal is coming from, let alone whether or not they have the newest iPhone. And there are people there that were happy as could be because they could find, reasons to be happy. They realize their life probably is limited. They're probably not going to live to be particularly old. So what's the point of sitting and moaning and groaning about it while you are alive? What's the point of just focusing on all the things that you don't have? That's just so silly.
I think each of us, we all have different ways of how we are happy. And I think we all just have to continue to support each other and keep that positive mindset and be there for each other. And if someone is down, we got to reach out to them and see what we can do to help them any way possible, because we're at a time now where a lot of people are going through stuff, but the one thing that we can do is just support each other, be there, be a positive mind, give them a positive thought or anything. And I think we'll be in a better place a year from now.
Absolutely.
I don't know what's going to happen next. That's the one thing, but I think we can see the unity of America, the world, and if that's the ultimate power right there, is we all get along, we're all there to support each other. Nothing will stop us.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, yes, this is an uncomfortable situation, but it's not the first time that humanity has been through something like this. We've been through pandemics, we've been through elections for sure, we've been through all of these things before, and we survived. Like, humanity survived. And yes, it does come with its own struggles, it comes with its own fears, unfortunately it comes with its own losses, but I actually think I might have COVID, but I'm not going to let that consume my entire life right now. I'm not going to be like, oh my God, I'm going to be responsible about it, but I'm not just going to say, oh my God, my whole life is terrible and everything's just over because I potentially have this. I'm going to be responsible and take care of myself and be grateful for the things that I do have during this time. It's a time to really check in, But yeah, I think being supportive of people, and I know it is really hard during this time, and there's a really big uptick on the mental health struggles. I know that the crisis lines are overflowing with calls. I think I read one statistic where one of them had an 800% increase in calls between April of last year and April of this year. The addiction rates and relapse rates are through the roof. And guys, don't try and do this alone. I know that we feel very isolated, and I know that we feel very overwhelmed right now, but you always have somebody that you can reach out to, even if it's one of us, even if it's, just finding a group on Facebook, even if it's talking to a friend or family member, jump on Skype, do something. Just don't let yourself disconnect right now, because there are still people that care. And even if I don't know you personally, I can't tell you how much it destroys me every time I see in the news that someone lost their battle, that someone lost their life to suicide. Even if I didn't know that person, it destroys me because I see the lost potential and I see the pain that was there, and I see all of this like struggle that this person had. And I don't see it as, oh, they're weak. I see it as they just couldn't fight anymore. They fought as long as they could and they just couldn't fight anymore. And if you're feeling, invisible, or you're feeling like a struggle right now, I just want you to know that I see you. And I see your pain. I get it. I might not know exactly what you're going through, but if you do need somebody to talk to, please feel free to reach out on social media or whatever, email, whatever's good for you. YouTube, lots of options nowadays. I am doing, actually, I'm doing a challenge too, because I want everybody to be able to have access right now to mental health, just different mental health options and stuff, ways to improve their mental health. So I am doing a free challenge for anyone that's interested, that's just looking for a little extra right now to boost their happiness. And I've seen a lot of results, people improving their DAS scores even in that 5 days. So usually it's about $300, but I'm doing it for free right now. And there's pie, it's dancing and pie. Now what freaking challenges can you take out there that involves pie, guys? But yeah, it's just a free 5-day challenge, and you'll also get a copy of my workbook, how to improve your productivity and boost your happiness. Because like I said, that right there, you can download it immediately. First step, get yourself moving forward. Don't let yourself get stuck in this rut of COVID and elections and stress, and it's a lot. But I really think it's important that, like you said, we stick together and we offer what we can to help each other and to help each other get through this. I definitely know what it's like to be at rock bottom, or in my case, way up high on that ledge. I know what that's like. And I want people to know that they aren't alone, and that we can get through this, and you can get through whatever it is you're going through and come out on the other side.
So what does the future look like you personally and professionally? What are you hoping to accomplish in the next few years?
Well, I'm super excited because I landed a literary agent, so my book should be out next year. So that was a huge goal for me, something very big that everyone can look forward to. So it's my story of the challenges and the overcoming, and how Chester and how Lincoln Park had helped me through a lot of that. So that's my next big one. I have quite a few bigger features coming up in Phoenix Magazine. I just did a couple for Oxygen Magazine. So I'm really excited about that. I've been really excited to have the opportunity to not only, I mean, this is the cool thing, is I always wanted to be a model. That was always something I wanted to do, but now it's like I get to model with a voice too. So yes, my pictures get featured. Yes, I might land a cover, but it's my story. And it's just not, here I am and I'm a pretty face. I mean, that's cool and that's great and all, but it's like, here I am, here's a pretty face, and here's the story behind it. And here's the struggle behind it. And here's the pain behind it, because we all have, our own struggles. It isn't an if or who, it's a when, because everybody's going to go through periods of struggle, periods of depression, periods of anxiety, periods of uncertainty. So I'm really excited for the book. I'm really excited for these features. I'm really excited for this challenge, actually. If you want to sign up for that, it's happinessboost.life. But I'm really excited to just connect with people. I'm excited to see where everything takes me right now, where the YouTube channel is going to go, where the book's going to go, where the program's going to go. Just everything right now is so exciting, because 2020 I know has been weird, but good can come out of weird. I'm weird, and I think I'm pretty cool and awesome. So I think that we can definitely find good in the weird, and a lot of good has happened to me this year, and I wouldn't have felt that had I still been in the darkness. I definitely would have just laid down and wallowed in self-pity and and let the virus come and take me. But there's definitely a lot of good to be seen.
For someone that's listening to this interview, based on your journey and experience, what tips or advice would you give someone to overcome their obstacles, accomplish their goals, and rise to their challenge?
First of all, remember that whole adage, it gets better, isn't a complete sentence. It gets better when you decide to make it better. And when you take control, you take back your power, and you decide that it's time to start moving forward, that's when it's going to get better. I remember my dad, other than the prove them wrong, which I think is the overall message of this podcast. I remember actually my dad, one of his last big pieces of advice before he passed away was, don't give up hope, because you never know what will happen tomorrow. And had somebody told me, I mean, look at 2020, that's a perfect example of this. Had somebody told me in the beginning of 2020 that all of this was going to happen, I'd be like, no, you're crazy. But on the flip side, it's like, if somebody would have told me that I was going to be sitting here, having this conversation with you, having a conversation with Jamie Bennington, getting my book endorsed by Billy Bob Thornton, I would have never believed any of that, because I didn't believe in myself. But, if you take that action, if you do move forward to making it better, the possibilities are so crazy endless. And I promise you, you will be pleasantly surprised at how things start to shift in your life. So it does get better, but you have to take action to make it better. But if you are listening to this and you're struggling, I just want to reiterate that you're not alone, and there are people out here that care, even if we don't know you. I certainly care, and I always think whenever I see these things on the news of that Lincoln Park song, One More Light, who cares if one more light goes out? I do. I care, and there's so many people that care about you. Just reach out. We got you. We'll get you through this.
Well, man, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about your rise to the challenge. We all have learned so much, and we're inspired by you, and we're excited to see what the future looks like for you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was exciting.